Okay, so yeah, so welcome everybody. So here, this is our AMA, and we're just gonna go through our proposal slides just to get everybody oriented, and then we're gonna dive in, and you're all invited to like take notes, and after the end of this, like we can go deep and double click on any specific slide, statement, question, potent. This is an AMA. Ask us anything. Okay, so let's go. So this is the title of our proposal, Ecosystem Strategy by the creators of Catalyst and Intersect. We want to dramatically improve the ROI on SingularityNET ecosystem treasury. The vision we have is that the builders and entrepreneurs engaging with the ecosystem can fully realize their potential, that there is a decentralized ecosystem strategy that is energizing and inclusive of all the kind of value-adding stakeholders, and that once that's established, that all the different actors, whether the institutions and the foundations and the companies and the individuals and the community can all actually coordinate and improve SingularityNET ecosystem and the stuff they're building on top of it based on facts and expertise. So there's like a good platform for coordination. So what is blocking us from getting to that vision? So first of all, this is another Jen is in the room. I think that this is stated very black and white because we wanted to have clarity. Of course, there's shades of gray, but I think first of all, we want more of the voice of the builders and entrepreneurs to be heard and processed. I think there's a lack of, we call it accountability towards addressing key weaknesses in our ecosystem. So what I mean is that there's no explicit identification of okay, where are we lacking? Okay, what can be improved? And there's no specific individual entity company saying we're on it. We're gonna take care of it within X time, and here are how we're gonna measure that, that it's actually worked on. And there's not this holistic ecosystem strategy that's targeted at realizing SingularityNET's potential. Okay, so there is no publicly available, at least to the best of my knowledge, there is no public available document that all the actors can kind of converge around and say this is the strategy, this is our goals, our targets, key gaps, key opportunities, this kind of strategy components. So, Johnny, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, and so like any kind of report and research where we're trying to improve things, it starts with a good amount of data and analysis. We want to take a very data-driven approach. And so in order to do this, we first want to kind of frame things. And I've developed ecosystem architectures in the Cardano ecosystem, and SingularityNET also has a ecosystem architecture that consists of many different components, from the marketplaces on SNet to NewNet to some of the things that are being built on SingularityNET. So you look at who's maintaining the core infrastructure of SingularityNET, as well as who's building on, who's governing the ecosystem, as well as the governance of SingularityNET and the operations of SingularityNET. So that kind of makes up broadly the ecosystem architecture. And from that, we segment and we go and talk to different builders building in the different segments of SingularityNET and their experiences. And we have a question bank and a structured systematic methodology for conducting these interviews. We understand what matters is a language of value for each of those different segments and perspectives. We conduct a competitive analysis of how other ecosystems are working, as well as other crowdfunding community grant programs. We also looked at the ecosystem state and readiness for onboarding those builders. We try to understand specifically the builder journey. What is that? What are their various entry points? What are their delights as well as their pains? We looked at the incentive mechanisms that are there for quality proposers, builders, as well as reviewers in the community. And we looked at the kind of follow the money, the treasury and grants decision-making process, as well as the overarching strategy for the broader ecosystem. And we try to understand this kind of strengths and weakness, and we put that into the report. And so if we look at SingularityNET's ecosystem architecture stack, this is just kind of, taken, it's from a lot of the other stuff that we already see out around. And so it's like any architecture stack, it's kind of broken into various layers for building on the things that most developers are going to be building on. And then the underlying components and their relation and relative distance to kind of the core of everything that makes up the SingularityNET ecosystem architecture stack. From a reporting and follow-up standpoint, we assimilate and pull all of this in, and we polish it up, make it look nice. That main report includes an assessment of all the data and analysis we gathered, distilled, of course, from those conversations, from those workshops, from those builder and stakeholder interviews, as well as a set of recommendations to address the issues and the opportunities that we've identified. And then we conduct a series of workshops to validate, disseminate, share that information, share our findings, and turn those report conclusions into actions.
Okay, I think we can talk about why us. I think that, basically me and Johnny are just like experts with a proven track record for bootstrapping and launching multiple ecosystems, where it's like Cardano and Catalyst or Mina with ZK Ignite, and we also have this like legitimacy because we're known both from the community side, both from the institution side. We also know we also know like people in SingularityNET Foundation. So it's like we have this like, I think we're a great bridge, between all the different parts of the ecosystem. And also, we are independent. We're directly accountable to the community. We're gonna get paid by the decentralized treasury. That gives us the ability sometimes to say things a bit more, more directly, and kind of come a bit tabula rasa, to the table, which I think is nice, is good, healthy. Okay, this is like our propaganda part where we ask you to vote for us and share. But here, let's stop now the share, and I'm genuinely curious to hear what are people's thoughts about this. Like, if anything we said here is like, totally wrong, or it's like, off track, or it's like really, really good and you really resonate with, like that kind of comments, I'd love to like kind of dig deeper into. Felix, you can go ahead.
From mainly Catalyst and Intersect, since years in Catalyst. Met you there as well, though, and also in two organizations which have been accepted as founding members at Intersect. I would challenge you actually a little bit, because I can see there are some massive flaws in the design of Intersect, much more than on Catalyst, but both actually really focusing much more corporate environment and not that much a, let's say, decentralized grassroots bottom-up developers community. And we saw over longer time now in Catalyst, how first ideas actually impact very negatively larger communities. And in Intersect, that it's even so far that they don't even open up anything to the community. A little bit on the same way like Catalyst, to say, no, we first have to get the whole decentralized structure done first internally, and then we open up. And the community is actually mostly enabled and empowered to participate, but mostly in already made decisions. And they are not really included in, let's say, becoming early administrators and operators of the whole designing process. Therefore, I think you have a lot of experience, but I'm also a little bit afraid by knowing Singularity and Deep Funding, and that they have a very different, let's say, approach to the whole thing, actually. Where I would be almost a little bit afraid on seeing too much Catalyst Intersect design swapping over here. How would you address this?
I think I want Johnny to respond more,
Yeah.
because I think he's like the Intersect guy, and that was like most of the critique. But I think, I just want to say that, like, we're all humans, okay? Like, I'm not Catalyst. Johnny is not Intersect, okay? We are individuals, who went through the journey, learned, did some things right, did some things wrong, are trying to be pretty honest and forward about what needs to improve and continuing to iterate. And, so I think it's important to say that, and after, I left Catalyst, after Catalyst, like I did ZK Ignite. I think the ZK Ignite program in MENA addresses a lot of the things we've learned over time, and I think like the work we're gonna do, this proposal, we're gonna do some more learning and more work and more iteration and more honing, and it's, we're not perfect, just to be clear. Okay, Johnny, like, please.
Yeah, no, I think it's like to reiterate what Dor said, I'm not Intersect, right? I contributed a lot of my thoughts, and I was very much Felix, I've always been for the people, by the people. And that was one of the things that was very important. And obviously, we've gone our separate ways now. One of the things that I think is, and that's actually pretty important, because we're like Dor said earlier, we're kind of unshackled now, within any kind of venture. And, obviously I was formerly, for those of you that don't know, I was a director at IO. Dor was, head of governance. So we were both formerly IO employees, right? And without going too much into it, I think in any organizational dynamics, there's power structures, hierarchies, and differences and some of those hierarchical power imbalances makes it sometimes difficult to speak up in ways that might be politically inconvenient or uncomfortable, right? Now, I don't think that ever really stopped Dor and I from being champions for the people and understanding the importance of community in all of these ventures. And you see that in just how Dor went about things from the very beginning with Catalyst and involving community as much as possible. Did we get everything right and perfect? No, but I think our intentions and our intent was always there. And in fact, now that we're kind of independent and unshackled, right? That's not to say, we're trying to do a hit on any of the other organizations or entities that exist to expose anything, right? But I think moreover, we can speak freely and independently, and I think that is really important.
Great question, Felix, though. Yeah, anybody else, even, I mean, yeah, Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, of course, I have some questions. Now, I have to be very careful not to become very defensive on what deep funding is right now and what we've accomplished, and not being open to further improvements. But I'm open-minded, and any experience also from all the people here that I've received over the past years, a lot of well-known faces here, helps us grow. So having your expertise in here would also obviously be very valuable. I have two questions. One is looking backwards and the other is looking forwards. Starting with the backward-looking one. If you were at the foundation, I'm not sure about Johnny exactly, but I know Dor was at the foundation, the start of Cardano Catalyst. If you could do that all over again, what would you do differently?
Awesome question. Do you want to say the second one, or you want me to kind of answer and then we'll move to the second?
Yeah, answer this one and then we'll think about the second one.
Okay, wow, let's see. I mean, first of all, I regret nothing. I think it's hard to imagine, like, it's really, maybe thinking about those early days, really makes me smile, because it was basically coming out of nowhere. There was like no precedent. There was nothing similar to what we were doing. There was like a bunch of concepts and ideas and intentions, that were, I stumbled on in my PhD, or looking in like best practices in innovation, like as in done in a corporate innovation, and all sorts of like this kind of frameworks. And we took a massive bet, so we didn't have a lot of information. What we did see at the time in the blockchain space was, just like a list of DAOs and so-called decentralized funds that were not decentralized. They were not massive. Maybe a handful of people were participating in them with very little engagement. And, we got this opportunity to really invent the wheel, and so in a way, I really think we did, we did a lot right with what we knew. Now, the question is, like, if I could go back in time knowing what I know, yeah, I mean, I guess I have a few things. I have a lot of, I can talk a lot for like a few hours, I think, to list all the things, but I'll just give you a few examples. I think the decision-making mechanism, we could have set it up better. I think that the key word for me now what I feel is like really close to me is like building the capacity for decision-making over time. And in order to build the capacity for decision-making over time, you actually need to put kind of like talented, motivated people in position to make decisions. You need to nurture them over time. You need to give them the right information, so that the right information and tooling and methodologies to make these decisions. And I think in a way, like, we were put a lot of emphasis on the innovation part and less on the decision-making part. And now you can see, like, for example, in ZK Ignite, we had something much more like a format where we actually took cohorts of builders and end users and developers, to actually systematically like train them to make good decisions. And that made a huge dramatic difference, okay, in the entire vibe, okay? Like, so I'll just give you like a short example of this. Like okay, like for me, like we just made a proposal in Catalyst. We actually won, which was kind of surprising for me, somewhat, but we won. But it's like, why did we win? I don't know. Like, I didn't have a direct dialogue with all the voters, and like I didn't know what, why people said this. Those who said yes said yes. Those who said no said no. It's kind of a black box, and it's a really weird situation from a human perspective. And that's always like, I think that's like a really hard thing for any creative person, to deal with, that you put all your soul and effort into something and you just get a kind of a binary yes or no, and you don't even know why, like what's going on. It's like very inhuman, I feel. But when you work with a smaller group of people, you know that they're trained, they're carefully reading all the proposals, you can engage them in a dialogue, and you know that you get some pointers about what led them to decide, what made it to decide. It's like completely different feeling, I feel much more agency and empowered to go and work. And I also feel like the decision making itself from a strategic point of view, right? Because you can't just like decide, you see 100 proposals, this yes, this no, this yes, this no. You want to think about the big picture, okay? Like we're funding a cohort of whatever, like 20, 50 proposals. We don't want 5 proposals that are working on the same thing, all funded, like maybe you want more to diversify. Or maybe there's some things that are like of strategic importance, so we want to extra fund these types of proposals, even within the categories. A small group can talk and communicate and do that, and we can give them the space to really become elite decision makers. And I feel we never got to do that in Catalyst. So I think that's one of the things I would have started from the get-go. I don't know, should I go more? Should I give more examples? Because I think this one is like really important. I think.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think reputation systems. I think one should just go and start to do them and learn and iterate, and not forever be stuck in, because it's a wicked problem, right? We don't know. Like, I wish we just started to do that from the get-go, and rather than like kind of wait for everything to mature, because then we just don't learn. We keep getting stuck. I think let's see what else. I think actually having an explicit ecosystem strategy would have been great. Like actually having a document, a canonical document where, okay, these are the things we prioritize. This is why we prioritize them. This is how we're gonna measure, the success. This is the things we're focusing on. These are explicit things we're not focusing on. I think also developing that early on and make everybody, importantly the proposers, kind of aware what's the strategy, and everybody can align to the strategy, would have been great. Okay, so I'm gonna stop now. Johnny, what do you think?
Yeah. A little bit of backstory. The first time Dor and I worked together was, I guess, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, right? Where at the time, we were trying to figure out the space within a broader ecosystem context that Catalyst occupied. I think today we have a little bit more clarity in hindsight that Catalyst, along with Deep Fund and ZK Ignite and MENA, occupy space of basically creating an innovation commons, right? For funding, community funding, grant funding of innovation programs. I think the challenge, though, was there were certain types of ecosystem needs that may have been better addressed through some sort of coordinated effort of capable firms that could, rather than this kind of bottoms-up free-for-all innovation that Innovation Commons is well suited for, right? The community can sense the problems and propose solutions, and that's great and that's wonderful. But if they're, and I would relate this to an analogy of a city, right? If the city, a typical municipality has core infrastructure needs, roads and bridges, transportation, urban planning, that I don't want to say is benefits from central planning, but some sort of coordinated effort of experts in urban planning. And then the residents, the citizens of the community can then look at all of the other things that need addressing within the community and address proposals for that. But where tying it back to what Dor was saying about the need for a strategy, I say it goes beyond the need for just a strategy, but need for current state architecture. And so just for context, my background is in practice is I'm a practicing enterprise architect. And as an enterprise architect, we look very holistically at enterprises. And so I've had to adapt a lot of my frameworks and thinking models away from a single kind of corporate enterprise to more of an ecosystem, right? And so instead of thinking about a single skyscraper or a building within a community, I think about the community holistically. And so I borrow a lot of metaphors and analogies from urban planning. And so in this kind of urban planning context, you have it would be helpful if we had not just a strategy for this community in the city, because maybe we don't have one strategy, or we maybe at a community or an urban planning context, we want to develop the industrial zone, or we want to develop, improve transportation and throughput, or maybe want to invest in parks and beautification and greenification, or maybe we want to revive our commerce downtown district. Whatever that case is, when you have the notion of a strategy, that strategy has to drive and says, what systems of capabilities do we need, right? Do we have, first and foremost? So that gives you a portfolio of capabilities that already exist within the ecosystem or within the community. And then we say, well, based on our needs and the changing global landscape and the needs of the citizens, maybe we need more to improve transportation and congestion. Maybe traffic's getting really bad. And so from that perspective, you would look and say, okay, well, at this point, do we want to invest in light rail? Do we want to, get buses? Do we want to institute bike lanes? Do we want to incentivize carpooling solutions? Whatever the solutions are, the strategy for the community says, we want to improve quality of life by reducing time that our citizens or the folks in our community have to spend in traffic. And then from there, you look at various solutions and you do the studies. And you say light rail would be nice, but is it the best solution? Do we want to spend that kind of money? What's it going to cost? And do we have capable firms and that are going to be able to address the unique requirements of building a light rail solution? Or maybe we build buses and we build dedicated bus lanes and we reduce the number of lanes allocated to cars. Whatever that case is, it's driven first by a strategy and an assessment of your current capabilities that exist within the ecosystem.
Johnny, there's kind of a follow-up question here. It says, will this proposal address this in SingularityNET, what you just described, and how?
Yeah, that's certainly we want to frame, because deep funding right now is well suited, is the experiment for addressing crowdsourcing innovation funding, right? But what about some of the more core fundamental needs around other parts of the SingularityNET ecosystem that so we want to make sure that we're framing deep funding, the set of capabilities that deep funding provides, in a broader context of the whole entire holistic SingularityNET ecosystem, not just the innovation commons aspect of it, right? And so we're not going to solve some of those other problems, but maybe one of the challenges with Catalyst is that there's an expectations reality gap. And I think from the beginning, because there was no clarity around how the governance of Cardano works, how the development of core infrastructure works, Catalyst became overloaded. And so every one of Cardano's problems were kind of piled into Catalyst for Catalyst to solve. And perhaps there's a category of problems that Catalyst is better suited to solve, like building dApps, like building developer tooling, like funding community adoption and other aspects of that. But maybe updating the Cardano node or doing a node diversity and building a non-Haskell node isn't the best thing for Catalyst to have to try to go off and address. And so similarly in SingularityNET, maybe building agents or maybe building integrations to other LangChain or other large language models, adapters, connectors, and agents is something that Deep Fund is well situated to solve. But changing the core architecture of the tokenomics of SingularityNET itself isn't the most best thing for Deep Fund to go solve, right? And that might be well situated for a different aspect of the broader ecosystem to go solve. And so by framing the capabilities that Deep Fund addresses and is well suited to address currently, maybe instead of piling everything into Deep Fund to go off and solve, we carve out certain categories of problems that the foundation is better suited to solve, right? Because it requires more coordinated effort. And so by framing it that way, that's one of the things that we hope the report will kind of elucidate.
Okay, we have two hands raised. I'm not sure which one is first. Maybe you can two decide between yourselves.
We didn't
think it's
finish
William.
Gian's
Oh yeah, yeah.
second question.
Yeah, the second question.
We took half an hour for one question.
I think Guillermo was
Before-
probably reacting to something that Dor was saying, so I think it's appropriate to give Guillermo the word right now.
Thank you, John. Okay, so first, Dor, I have to say, good to have you here. I think Felix made the first question I wrote down. And by the time I was able to relog from a computer connection problem, I have to tell you, so first I was a skeptic about you being real behind your proposal. And that's part of we evolving on the next round with our own platform and the things that Sol wasn't able to resolve for us, you know. That's some of my personal belief that is one of the communities and ecosystem biggest challenge, that is to get our heads out of a hole. If we want to make these tools really to be able to change reality, we need to stop hiding and you know, having profiles without faces, without really us being able to background check who's behind the proposal. First thing I have to say is I didn't believe it was you behind the proposal, so I was happy to see your face on this town hall.
I might be just a AI-generated video though, but you know.
No, you're not. You're not. You are no, because I think you are, and all of us, we are full of mistakes, and the only ones that accept that are the ones that are real, you know. So I just grasped the last part of your answering, Felix, first question, but. It's obviously that this experiment is a hard endeavor. The social experiment that Catalyst was, that I was lucky to join in Fund 7, it is amazing, and it's something that for all of us that are involved in creating, it's a really hook, you know. It's like a drug, definitely something that it's a book that you will never finish reading. This is an amazing, evolving experience for all of us. So, before I jump to the question, it's really something that a community miss their leaders, you know? It does. And we discussed with Felix like 2 or 3 months ago when he shared a link about some results that you put together from different funds from Catalyst, you know, that you shared experience and all this information from your analysis, and we talk about it, how Catalyst missed you. It really did. And at the end, how the necessity of Catalyst change because of the market, and as for something that Johnny was mentioning, they use it to bring results, to solve Cardano problems, no? And at the end is something that we are lacking in a lot of proposals, that is having a business model incorporate, and the idea of that proposals can sustain themselves from funding. They need to make money. And that's one of the biggest challenges from all proposals in AI and proposals in blockchain. So I go now into the question, and I'm sorry I went too long on it. So what do you see different already between these two visions and missions? Because it looked like the same, but it's quite not the same. What do you feel? What is your first feel?
So when you say the two, you mean Catalyst and Deep Fund, Cardano and Singularity? Like which two are we comparing?
No, but I think you can discuss one taking it from the mother, you know, the mothership or the conceptual behind it. So it's Catalyst, of course, you need to incorporate it into the Cardano vision, and we are discussing deep funding, how it transcends to reshape and make strong SingularityNET. So how do you see, what's the difference you see between both of these organic creators already? If you want to go between Catalyst and deep funding, your call. But how do you see, what is the difference you see?
Okay, that's a very wide question, because I think there can be many differences. I mean, first of all, I think they have a lot in common. They have much more in common than they're different, you know, compared to other ecosystems in the blockchain space. So first of all, they're quite similar in their essence, the intention behind, and like, so it's almost like, you know, I think with definitely the quadratic voting element is really big. I think it's like, I guess another one is a Catalyst is kind of let's call it like mature. We don't know, like we're literally writing the book right now, okay? But, you know, if I had to guess, I would say the Catalyst like more like in this like mature, massive state, you know, that's like a giant, you know, Cardano is like a top 10 blockchain, tens of thousands of participants, you know, it has like a whole set of issues, you know, that they're dealing with that are not the burning topics right now for Deep Fund and SingularityNET. I think SingularityNET is still in this like really exciting, I think it's like the most amazing part, the early stage, the pioneer stage, just establishing, like seeding the leadership, you know, just electing your council, like it's like it's very different, you know, the feeling, the vibe, what you need right now. And also like the agency that people have right now is much bigger, because it's just like fewer people, you know, it's fewer people and a lot of like the actions, you know, that you're doing right now are going to really have a big impact on how things are going to evolve. I also think that like in the case of SingularityNET, I think we have this like existential AI risk, and we live in a world, you know, right now it's like, I think SingularityNET sits on, it's like, you know, it sits on an atom bomb, you know, it sits in war, you know, it's wartime right now, you know, there need to be immediate actions being taken care of, you know, there's a big weight for the decisions and how they're going to impact the world. And with Cardano, I think it's less like that. You know, I think in some ways it could be like, but it has less of this crazy urgency, because right now AI is exploding in an exponential rate, and like, I think it makes a huge difference. So, and you know, again, like I want to stop myself. I think I just wanted to point out a few key differences, and maybe we can move to the next question.
Thank you, Dor.
I suggest first have Stephen ask his question.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Hi, Dor. Yeah, I was also involved in Catalyst from quite early on, and one of the major things which I noticed was small groups did emerge actually in the community, and with great capability. The problem was that they weren't sustained because the black box was not only the voting system in Catalyst, but also the organization. So it was very much a top-down approach in Catalyst Cardano, which we don't really want to repeat in SingularityNET, I would suggest. Also, my impression of SingularityNET coming from Catalyst is that's a very different culture. Particularly, there doesn't seem to be so much of a black box organizationally. I mean, I think the Supervisory Council elections are an example of that. It's a very different feel and drive there behind the impetus, which is a good thing. You have a point about scale, Dor, you're right. And I think we mustn't, you know, we obviously have an advantage of having a small community, you know. So again, circling around this black box thing. So let's address that. You know, there is certainly this kind of arbitrary sense that, you know, where different proposals put their proposals in, and it kind of seems quite random. Well, it may seem random, in terms of what the results are. Do you think, looking back at Catalyst, should this be treated as an experiment in terms of, and if it is, should you set a strong baseline, an iteration, and a process of community discovery in order to verify your approach? And are you going to take that approach here with your solution? And if so, how are you going to go about setting the baseline?
Let's see. I think that first of all, yeah, it's great talking to you. And yeah, you definitely you are still one of the grassroots leaders, in both communities. And I want to clarify your question again. So are you? I guess are you asking? I'm not sure. Like, I don't have a clear reading of what the question
Sorry,
is.
I was throwing a lot in there, wasn't I, Dor? Sorry. I mean, first of all, I found it interesting how you characterized you started part of your presentation was talking about the black box effect of voting in terms of decentralized voting. And we have that in Catalyst, where it seems quite random. Like you said, why do people vote for me? I don't know. And that is a real issue because, as you say, that affects whether people engage with the community, because they may feel alienated because some whale didn't vote for them or downvoted all their proposals, etc. There's also a flip side to that where so I suppose the question is, in SingularityNET, how are you going to address that? How are we going to address how can we dissolve, if you like, that black box without sacrificing people's identity, that kind of stuff? And if you have an approach, the second part of that was, how do you construct your approach? You seem to have a certain approach, like Johnny. He painted a picture of the ecosystem analysis and all that. That's like a hypothesis, I would suggest, Dor. Okay, so what is the baseline, and what if you're wrong? We're always wrong, actually. So what, are you going to set some sort of baseline for that approach? That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So let's see. So, okay, black box. Let's set black box, okay? Where, yeah, I think there's like a bunch of approaches one can do to not feel like it's a black box. I think it's worth to, I don't think it's wise to just land a bunch of solutions incorporate into existing systems without like having kind of more of a deep dive into what's going, like you kind of need a bit more context and a bit more research, and part of this proposal is actually doing that research, before you can just like give us solutions. But I think directionally, I would say, well, you want the end state. Is like the end state you wish to receive is like energized people. Okay, you want your builders in your ecosystem to feel energized and motivated and just keep on building, and you want them to be able to direct themselves in an intelligent fashion. Okay, like be responsive to reality and learn to navigate it. These are like, for me, this is like kind of like the desirable end state. Now there's like a lot of ways to get to it. I think it can be something as simple as basically having like the group of deciders kind of give some simple rationale about why they did what they like, why they voted yes or no on certain things, and share them back with the proposers. It could happen in the form of a dialogue. Sometimes, like, of course, you can't sustain it over thousands of proposals, but maybe like the ones that are, some percentage of them that are leading, like have a chance of some sort of a conversation, something on a more human level. It could come in the, in the earlier like assessment process, and I think here like Deep Fund does a great, like here, for example, I felt like Deep Fund is kind of moving in the right direction, where there's like high granularity of feedback and engagement, versus Catalyst, it's been taking a step back, and kind of lowering the impact of this community advisors, which is like a shame, because it's like, because that was actually a medicine for that. And I think there's other methods you can do it, but I think the key is like, again, we need to switch away from these feelings of these systems being like these mechanisms of decisions, and just decisions or just like driving an input, and really fully understanding the humans in this process and the human energy, and how you make people like believe and trust and feel energized and feel motivated and want to continue to do things, and how do you treat them like all across their interactions, how they interface with these programs, like from A to Z, that every step of the way they feel more, they feel more belonging, they feel more motivation, they feel understood, they feel heard, they feel like they're in the center. And I think this is how you can really attract the best builders, even if you don't necessarily have the most funds to disperse. And you're actually attracting the right kind of talent as opposed to attracting just mercenaries. So now the second question, I think, is like kind of like how to measure that. I think it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to measure because it's human, right? Like human energy, like feeling understood, feeling energized, feeling motivated. Like how do I measure it? Like, outcomes. Some outcomes, you can only know like in 2 or 3 years in the future, you can only validate them if things were actually, where did you find it was breakthrough and what was like a lot of hype, that's like the tragedy of the blockchain, I think, in a lot of times, that if people actually literally don't know and they keep pretending they know. But you can look at people's energy, okay? You can look at like the quality of the people you attract, their profile. You can ask them to assess, to become like their own sensor array of like, how am I feeling? Am I feeling energized? You can look at retention. You can look at, I think a lot of it is like kind of almost like qualitative analysis of how people are feeling, which is like, I know it's like a bad, we shouldn't talk about feelings here, but I think like putting them, bringing it more up, and could be really useful. And actually, like, I think I'd love actually to ask Johnny kind of a similar question about like, how do you measure this kind of energy, or like, how do you measure this engagement in a way that you think is more, because I think it's one of those big open problems. We have a few methodologies to do them. I don't think there's any perfect methodology.
Yeah, I would say that baselining and analysis and looking at the data is important. It is a little bit harder in the case of Deep Fund, because very early in the process and you don't have a whole lot of historical baseline from which to make tweaks, adjustments, and refinements. But we kind of have seen an arc, if you will, in other innovation commons programs, right? Radical innovation funds. And one of the things that I thought was cool with Catalyst was they had the idea of challenge setting and challenge teams. And that's great, because it's not just some high council deciding these are the categories, right? But the community itself can sense, define categories of problems, define how much of a priority is, and allocate to that. And so, but as things became kind of operationalized and we started to see the patterns and we started to operationalize in certain areas, I think they've gone a complete direction of just eliminating the whole notion of challenge setting altogether. So now it's just all kind of fixed, defined categories. And I think those two should be able to coexist. And so you should be able to have a multimodal approach to saying there are certain cow paths that have emerged, and we want to do less bespoke things and more structured evaluation criteria and scoring for these things that we see as somewhat steady state patterns, while still leaving room for complete experimentation, grassroots kind of community sensing, community addressing of those problems. And so perhaps that's something that we can try to look at. The other thing that we've seen from, anecdotally from the baseline of history we've seen in other innovation funds is this challenge around incumbency bias, right? And incumbents become more deeply entrenched, crowding out the ability for novelty, right? And I think a lot of that is also kind of has to do with macroeconomic conditions. I mean, I think it's just the human nature that in times of scarcity and in this crypto bear market, if you will, that there is a bias towards and a tendency towards shying away from novelty. And you saw that in the Zerberus report about Catalyst, right? People kind of want to say, hey, as a whale in my economic interest, and it's kind of funny, and if you kind of look at cognitive biases and, typically when people need to embrace and pivot more towards novelty, they actually kind of tend to go the opposite direction and double down on proven known commodities. And so maybe that's something that, and I don't know yet, because until we're funded and we can actually look at the data and go through everything, it's hard to say these are going to be our recommendations. That would be, a travesty to already know what our recommendations are. We have, Dor and I have experience and we've identified and seen patterns, but we don't want to have these anchor biases, right? That were confirmation biases, and we're trying to avoid any sort of confirmation bias there. But those are some of the things that I think, Stephen, to kind of address your question, right, of just, baselining, and rather than just throwing a bunch of improvements out there, knowing what our recommendations are already and just trying to rubber stamp them, I think we do want to start from a clean slate, guided by intuition and experience, and then kind of validate and use experimental, scientific approaches to see if these, what is appropriate, and taking into context, the specific context unique to Deep Fund.
Yeah, thanks, Dor and Johnny, for responding. I'll hand over to people that have the hands. I will finally say that it's one thing to have analysis, and analysis has its own incumbent bias. But I would suggest a process of discovery is really important, so yeah, and I'll just hand it over to other people who've got their hand up.
Yeah, just real quick, I mean, an important component of ours is speaking to builders, right? Speaking very open-ended with builders and understanding the builder journey, because only from that can we even begin to consider recommendations and improvements.
A great point, Johnny. And I think we should just talk more of this meeting. I think you have a lot of insights and wisdom to share with us, and I think we should just also take this off this meeting, but also just have a conversation. Okay, who's next? Jan, you want to ask your second question, and then we can do Felix, and I don't know who's between Sierra and Felix, who's.
Sarah was the first one, actually, with the hands.
Yeah, it's kind of a false play, right? That I say, oh, next time I'll say, I have 15 questions, and then I'll start with the first, so nobody else gets a turn. There's so much here. So I would love, whether you win this grant or not, would love to have a long talk with you guys. Because I see there's a lot of things happening in deep funding already, and things in the pipeline already. So I find it hard to think about where to start. Let me give you one pointer on, we were talking about small crowds of people that are talking about projects and giving feedback to the proposers, that is important. And I totally agree. I think one of the main success factors of a grant program like this, especially as it grows bigger and bigger, which it is already, is making sure that the best, most value-adding proposals float to the surface. No community member can or wants to go through 100, let alone thousands, proposals and select the best one. So we need to have some kind of processes in place. What we are thinking about, so what we have right now is we have peer reviews by awarded teams, and a very important part of that peer review is talking together. Not just random people rating and then taking an average and put it out there, but no, actually coming together, talking together like a scrum poker meeting thing, and discussing what is good and not good. And that will turn into a recommendation that is published. Unfortunately, our current portal doesn't allow us to contact the proposers directly, strangely enough. And we don't want to put bad recommendations out there, so we are limited to positive feedback right now. In our new portal, which we will have in the next round, which is developed in-house, we will have a rating system that will address the same 4 criteria that we have right now: feasibility, viability, desirability, and added value to the platform. But also open it up to every person. And then the next step is that we will use our reputation system to give weights to different ratings. So that alone, and it's not just stars, it's also actual feedback, will give the builders a lot of feedback and insights in what they can do better and what the sentiment is on their proposals. So I just wanted to share that with you. I think when I read your proposal, Dor, I was a little bit struck by the fact there is no strategy. And I thought, wow, that's quite an assumption to think there's no strategy here. I felt a little bit offended there, but then I thought, or actually just now thinking about it, I thought, there is not a strategy document. And then I thought, should there be? And a couple of months, half a year ago, for internal purposes, I wrote down everything that we've discovered so far and what we're planning to do. And it was quite a lengthy document, but I didn't publish it. Actually, I was looking for it just now to see if I had published it, but I didn't. And I think there's a good reason for that. And I think, and I will elaborate a little bit more, but the question that I will ask is, how will you avoid that strategy will get into the way of innovation? And here's the thing. We don't have a strategy, but we have a very clear mission or North Star, and it's in our condition. There are 2 conditions that every proposal has to align to. The first is it has to align with the mission and vision of SingularityNET in trying to bring about a beneficial artificial intelligence. So it has to be beneficial for humanity as a whole and every individual. And the other one is that it must help the platform grow. So somehow it can be a marketing proposal, you can create a service, you can use a service, you can create tooling, but somehow it has to help the platform, has to help grow the platform. And then there is the way that we want to do, and that is kind of the bigger vision of Deep Funding. We want to build, or I actually want to build, a community of builders, want to develop a community of builders. And funding is just one part of that. And there are things in the pipeline that we are thinking about doing. For instance, creating a DAO-like freelance platform as part of the whole thing. Now, with those 3 things, I think we can, for a lot of initiatives, we can determine whether it is or is not aligned to that greater goal. And if I would have, well, I created a strategy actually when I started with round 1, but we are way past that. And I think if I would have written down a strategy half a year or 9 months ago, so many things would have happened already that I would have never thought about right in that strategy. For instance, when we started, we had no governance round. Then we started governance round, but we did run into some issues. So now we started a focus group, a deep funding focus group as a mediator with the community. This round we started RFP proposals, which so far the voting still has to point out what the actual result is, but it's great. We got a fucking proposal from MIT. What more do you want? So, Johnny, you were saying you have to restrict yourself and see what you want to do and not do. Of course, that's right. But the way that I'm thinking right now is not so much what can we take away from deep funding and let the foundation do. I'm thinking quite the opposite. What can we take out of the foundation and bring into deep funding by means, for instance, of these RFPs that are really targeted and that way have a better way of creating value, targeted value, than only a pool mission title, for instance. So also that is something that I couldn't have thought of 3 or 6 months ago. It emerged because of certain dynamics in the organization, dynamics in deep funding, and a lot of discussions like we are having tonight. So what it comes down to in the end is what we are on right now is a path, an approach which resembles something like design thinking. Like you make something, you see what it is, you evaluate, and then you make something else. And the whole trick about design thinking is that you cannot think 3 steps ahead. That's the whole point of it. You do 1 step, you evaluate, and then you think what the next step is. And for me personally, that is extremely fulfilling because it stays alive and it stays new. And what scares me a little bit about your proposal is that I'm afraid that it will bring out a strategy for the next year or 2 years, and then it will bind us to that strategy. And to give you one more example, and then I will stop talking. We're all good talkers here. I've said a couple of times over the past few months, if deep funding 2 years from now or 3 years, whatever, is still a grant program that only does 3 or 4 rounds a year, like we're doing it right now, that would be boring. I want it to be creative. I want to do new things. I want to do different things. So maybe there will be rounds like we have right now in 3 years, but maybe there will also be different rounds in between that do something different, only RFPs or something completely different, I don't know. Maybe at the same time, there will be things that are not bound to any moments in time at all, but will continue, and we can think about processes for that as well. And these kind of changes are potentially so fundamental that I would find it very hard right now to write a strategy that could encompass all these things. So question is again, how will you reassure me and the rest of the community that your strategy will not limit us in our creativity?
Yeah, love it. Wow, so much to comment here. Okay, I'm gonna say a short thing. I'm gonna let Johnny say a short thing because Johnny has something to say, and then I can say kind of a longer response after Johnny. But I think the immediate thing is just that, yeah, we did a few things that were a bit confusing in the proposal itself in order to make it like accessible for the voters. We abstracted away a bit of the complexity, and I think this is a lot of the confusion comes from about our intentions. Like, we don't intend to come out with here's the blueprint for SingularityNET for the next 2 years, you know, now go and implement that. That's completely not our intention. It's like our intention is to build a foundation, okay? A foundation of understanding, you know, that can be disseminated en masse for the SingularityNET community, okay? To be able to start to iterate on a strategy in a way that is manageable, okay, and is not like overwhelming, because there is like isn't like a kind of a agreement even about the terminology or what's the or truth or what's going on, you know, because you have to have a few basic foundations for a dialogue. So the real emphasis on this on our work, like 80% of what we're doing in this proposal is like we're trying to make a working definition, okay? It could change, shift over time, okay? But make a working definition of like, who are the builders? You know, what types of builders are they? How they're contributing? What kind of different broad categories of building there are? You know, basically innovative grassroots projects compared to, let's say, like long infrastructure projects where nothing can go wrong. You know, where there's like the risk profile is completely different, and trying to create this, like think about it more from a structural way. We're trying to then like understand each one of these groups and each one of these categories, like who are these people, you know, what are these builders, you know, if we sample a few of them and talk to them deeply, what do they really want? Okay, what really drives them? What energizes them? What really pains them? What blocks them or slow them down from realizing their full potential? And we want to do it in a way that our intention is to do it in a way that opens up a conversation, okay, not closes it down, but saying like, hey, we talked to this amount, like several dozens of these builders, and like, these are some insights we got from them, you know, kind of a summary of it, you know, in a way that's digestible. Now we can start to do some workshops around that, you know, together. And like, okay, given that, let's say like, and again, I'm just making up something, okay, just because we don't know we haven't done the exploration. So if we go down the rabbit hole, like we did the interviews, like let's say we found that a lot of people are having a really hard time like onboarding, okay, to the Singularity and tech stack, okay? Let's say that's the main pain point. Then we can talk about like, okay, it seems like a strategic need here is to address this pain point, right? Like we need to focus on that first before we can unlock other things, because people are not even getting onboarded. Not that I'm saying that they're not getting onboarded, I'm just giving you an abstract example of a potential finding, maybe, you know, like,
onboarding is definitely a challenge and an issue.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a common thing. So I'm just saying that it's like in a lot of blockchains that are cutting edge, you know. So, but my intention is that like at the end of this proposal, like we've surfaced information in a structured way, digestible way. We engage the community in it. That at the other end of the tunnel, we're building actually we're having the ability to discern what's really important, what's high priority, okay, in terms of us thriving as an ecosystem, you know, what are issues that might be like, you know, maybe specific person really cares about them, but they're maybe not like a giant lever, okay, like for success. And of course, in an ideal thing, it's not one and done, and like we keep iterating on it and learning, but I think this is kind of like bootstrapping the kind of, because you know, Jan, I know you are a strategist, okay, so I know you've been deeply thinking about it, and I'm sure people in the foundation have been deeply thinking about it, but I think our goal is like to help that, you know, build the capacity, okay, that you know, it's not just like a handful of people that are really like know it all, but there's actually like a growing layer of leadership across SingularityNET of people who are starting to understand, you know, who are building their capacity to understand. They see the blockers, you know, they see the gaps, they see what the builders need, they see where their big opportunities are, and they feel more empowered because they have this understanding. They feel more empowered to engage in conversation and challenge things or add things, or just be energized to take those insights into turning them into proposals. That's really the intention, and I have more to say about innovation and strategy, but I'll tell you first.
I love it, Dor. Thanks for this short answer. I'm really curious about the long answer that Johnny will give now afterwards.
Yeah,
but
short,
let me just say one thing. one part of our strategy is to keep the internal organization as small as possible. We're basically 2 people, or 1.5 really, plus some people working on our new platform. So I love also strategy and also these things coming from the community. So in that way, I applaud it, and I'm really grateful for your proposal. Johnny.
Yeah, one of my Johnny-isms that I adopt, and just mottos in life, is always kind of cliche, but I use it every day. It's think big, start small, move fast, right? I think the key word in some of the deep fund literature and kind of materials available online is progressive decentralization. We hear that term quite a bit, right? And progressive decentralization means that, I think at some levels, that think big is what you said earlier really resonated with me, is, how can we move things not to the foundation, but to deep fund? But part of strategy always implies, a big part of strategy isn't about all the things you want to do. It's about all the things you need to do now, which implies there are certain things that are deprioritized and are not going to be strategic focus areas. Because if your strategy consists of 10 priorities, you might not as well not have any priorities at all, right? I mean, from a cognitive bandwidth standpoint, our human cognitive abilities, now we work in larger groups, there's more things that we can do, but then we have coordination and information challenges. And so perhaps it's better to have 3 priorities, right? And then kind of score.
I think you should come work for SingularityNET, because this is a message that in our organization is totally alien. We have 100 priorities in our organization, and
but do you really have any priorities at all?
But I agree to your point.
Yeah. So, and I think part of the strategy perhaps though is because and it comes back to values. And I think that one of the things that perhaps, that your concern of constraining true open-ended grassroots innovation by having this kind of anchor bias of having a stated official strategy might not be a good thing, right? It might not be a desirable thing. But perhaps one of the ways that you address that is to say that there will always be a carve out, right? Because if I look at the economics of Deep Fund, 30% of the total allocation to innovation funding, right, released over some period for the next 91 years, you kind of have to balance that against that. But there should perhaps be a statement that there will always be a carve out of at least 10 to 15% of each deep fund round that is completely unconstrained, right? That is not restricted to these categories or these types of things. But I think if nothing else, if you start to segment and say that as the cow paths emerge and you see that there are types of proposals that come in, you start to, rather than just having the same metadata and the same evaluation pipeline for every proposal, you say this is a proposal that affects this category, or it has this set of parameterization, and you start to operationalize that while still leaving it open-ended enough for those categories that don't fit, those proposals that don't fit neatly into one of the pre-existing categories. You still always have that open category challenge that's unconstrained, fundamentally is what I'm saying. But definitely think big, start small, and move fast, right?
So I thank you, Johnny. Okay, I'm gonna try to. I wrote many bullet points for the sake of, that will not stay forever. I'm just gonna go run through a few important ones. I'm just gonna say, first of all, I am gonna put my candidacy for the expert council. So hopefully, yeah, we can engage in a deeper conversation. Love to do that. It would be amazing if this proposal, and I could be like in the expert council, and I can actually like even put more of my capacity into it, and they can support each other. That could be like super awesome. But okay, anyway, I think that first of all, I want to say sorry if I hurt you. I think it was like unfair in the presentation to say there is no ecosystem strategy. I just want to acknowledge that, because I'm sure there is. Like, I'm sure the foundation has one, you know, and there's people who are holding it. And the intention was my intention was to say, there's not one that is publicly disseminated, known, you know, that the community at large can interact with. Just wanted to clarify that and maybe apologize for maybe not wording it well enough. And I think like another one is, yeah, okay, talking about this like strategy versus innovation. Yeah, there's a tension. Okay, the tension is, what is the economy? The economy is like control. Okay, like how much control do you want to exert on anything? Which is like classic innovation issue and classic strategy question. It's like usually the trade-off is like the more control you exert, you know, it's like you get more predictable results, but you also kill off human energy. Okay, like our human capacity for creativity, feeling agency internally, like our own fire. You know, it's like, you know, the more you exert control, you hurt that. So there is like a bit of a delicate balance of when and where you apply control and where you let go of control. And I think that a good strategy also needs to accommodate for that. And I guess, you know, I guess I think that sometimes, I guess, within you, okay, like each one of us here in the room, like as we operate in the world, we all want to understand it. Okay, we want to understand the world around us so we can be effective in it. Like it's like, and when we don't understand, we feel some kind of distress, you know, that can make us like kind of stick to our guns, stick to the familiar. It can make us like feel not empowered to put in our voice or opinion, position, put up a proposal. I think that what I hope is that with this like set of insights and recommendations, you know, there will be more people that will feel they are understanding, okay, or at least like we can generate through these workshops more insights and more understanding, and bring more, like, produce this capacity building that people would feel this agency. And so in this way, I feel that, yeah, like strategy can sometimes help innovation, you know, but I think also, yeah, there also needs to be a place where, and I do believe that you have to have priorities, you know, especially because we're in wartime. I guess that's my framing. It's like, because other organizations that do AI in the world do have priorities, you know, so we kind of have to, you know, we can't boil the ocean, right? Like we have to prioritize, we have to make hard decisions, but it's like, it's important that we understand why we're doing those decisions and why we're doing these priorities. And it's important to keep a place like a nature reserve, okay? Like a place where people can come and play and experiment and realize and not feel like under control. And there's space for that too. And that could be also part of the strategy. So, yeah. Yeah, like it's almost like, so it's almost like there's like innovation commons, but also there's like kind of like strategy commons, you know, that like kind of investing in that, and that would pay off for SingularityNET like over time, like big time, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.
But just say thank you.
Sarah, you have your hands up since a while.
Yes. Hi everyone. I'm Sarah. So yeah, first of all, thank you for, hey Johnny, I think I saw you in Japan. First of all, amazing discussions. I'm enjoying it. I think I would appreciate I appreciate Dor's authenticity and like public apologies. It's not easy to do, so I'm like to comment that as well. And John's question, brilliant question as well. So I think my question, I have two questions, really kind of similar to or like related to John's questions, but first, I think I see the tension between top down, bottom up, and how much control you want to have. Like strategy is inherently there's a connotation of control and top-down element, but also we want to move towards more bottom-up innovation ecosystem. And so I'm a proponent of progressive decentralization. So I believe that organizations go through different stages, and with more maturity, you can decentralize and when it's ready. And if you decentralize completely, like complete freedom from get-go, then I think it will not succeed. So I think it's great that we go through these steps. And I guess like coming back to your proposal, so with that in mind, I guess the insights and recommendations you come up today might not be relevant in maybe 1 year or 2 years. So what is the time frame or like a duration like that you have in mind of your recommendations and insights that come out of this proposal? So that's the first question, like how long are they valid, and what's your views on that? Second is that if these recommendations, if I understood, they will be published and they will be disseminated, but if they are not followed or adopted, it's useless, right? And I'm conscious of Jan's concern about this strategy document stifling innovation. So with that in mind, but still we want these priorities, these insights to be read and adopted by as many people as possible. How do you ensure that adoption by the community?
Great questions. Okay. Okay, I think my first answer about the time duration, I don't think there's like a precise timeline. I mean, I guess intuitively, I would probably assume that the validity of this is like maybe 6 months. Like, I think that's like sufficient amount. Like I'm saying 6 months intuitively, like because I think that's like enough time for people to take these insights and implement them, and then we can like remeasure and we review what's going on and what if there's like change of priorities or also like the industry in the field is progressing so fast that I think 6 months is like the maximum amount of time you can do this. It's like reasonable in my eyes. I don't know, Johnny, you have any insights about that? Do you agree with my intuition?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, 6 months in this space is an eternity. I think more than anything, it's just it's a baseline snapshot based on as many stakeholder interviews and workshops that we can do, right? And that'll kind of provide a point in time snapshot. And look, if by the time the report is out, it's like, look, we've already solved that problem, great, right? But I think, at least there's a connection between pain points or data points, right, that we can gather and elevate and get some visibility on, right? Then it's not about, making recommendations for problems or challenges that don't exist today, right?
Okay, and the second question was how to ensure adoption of our recommendation, and this was a very common question we got in this is what we identified as the kind of the key risk for this proposal, and there was like a interesting, like there was like a nice dialogue with the community around that. And I'm gonna say the headline answer, and then like I think Johnny can go into much more in the detail because we did a bit of a more analysis of it. But the big answer is that we believe that if you come out and say the truth and people see it and understand it, they will act. I think generally this community and the agents and like the actors in this community have really good intentions, are good people with good intentions, and when they see something that is truthful and understandable, they will do the right thing. That's, I think, for me, this is what I really deeply believe in, and I think that we have the capability of finding truth, justifying it the way that also like kind of like engineering-minded people can understand where we come to this conclusion, that we didn't pull them out of our ass, but it's like that there's validity to it. We can make it understandable, and we can leverage our expertise, okay, to even give it more legitimacy, and that people just gonna believe us. Like they can believe us, and of course they can also look into our background protocol, like methodology, and like the information we're gonna share to make it verifiable what we're saying. So for me, this is like the big thing. Beyond that, there's like a bunch of levers and things we can do. I don't know, Johnny, you want to touch about some of the finer points, because it is a big question.
And I think really, if you look at, I don't know how people feel about traditional management consulting and advisory firms like McKinsey and Bain and stuff, but they make it very easy for people to want to feel comfortable making certain decisions or taking certain actions, right? And I think a big part of this is, in the conversation around carrot versus stick, we obviously have no stick, right? We can't force anybody to implement any sort of recommendations. But I think if the recommendations or the insights that we provide are thoughtfully, mindfully, and well articulated, right? Then if they're actually good recommendations, and that's the only thing that gives them a chance of actually being actually implemented. So that's all the part that we can control is to be convincing, right? But not be convincing in a way that is, outwardly manipulative or to drive an agenda, but be convincing because the recommendations are data-driven, they're based on, sound rationale, and people can see that, and they're defensible. And so that's, how I would approach that ultimately. It's not about, see, we made these, Dor and Johnny from on high made these recommendations, and now they're not being implemented. What's the point of that? I think we're trying to steer and guide and inform more than anything else, as opposed to saying, go do these things. That's not our intent at all.
Yeah, Johnny, I want to add that, and we actually have, and actually to avoid it, like that we kind of give recommendations out of thin air and that are like not feasible to implement, or there's not even desire to implement. This is where the workshops come along. Like it all starts with the interviewing, because we're gonna talk to all the key actors, we're gonna listen to them, we're gonna receive their input, we're gonna involve them in the process, and then in the workshops, we're gonna share the information. We're gonna talk about the recommendation, we're gonna get their feedback and shift and precise and refine, these recommendations according to feedback by the people who are like supposed to implement this stuff. We're not going to work in a silo. And I think our intention is to bring everybody along for the ride, not to be like an external scientist that comes and poops a report that, that's like just a technicality. But part of the proposal is, part of the resources we ask is resources for workshops and for dissemination. And we are going to work, so we are going to work with a professional designer, and we're going to set up many channels to distribute and discuss, and process, like what's the outcomes and the milestones midway of this proposal.
Thank you.
Harry, what's next?
Thank you. Thank you, Felix. And thank you, guys. It's nice to meet both of you. So I had some questions to start with, but that was a long time ago. And I think I have probably more about observations now. So there might be some implicit questions in there. So my feeling, this thing about data and then vibes. So the data is digging all the data out, and the vibes is like Johnny said, the intuition, the feelings, as opposed to the thinkings. So initially when you were talking to it, and I did read it, but initially when you were describing it, and I'm nothing to do with the strategy or anything else for SingularityNET, but I didn't find it landed very well. And part of it was it landed at a very top level, and it landed in out of a stream. So it landed as an event in time that would then be repeated or would be acted upon. So I found that hard to get my head around. Well, who's the audience then? Who's actually the decision-making unit, the customer that this goes to? That was my initial concern. And then I think, Dor, when you went through it again and you said, well, actually, it's about the group of builders. And when you explained in more detail what it was, then I got my head around it more. And I think of some pointers. For me, from the way we look at things, what's really important for this is a complex adaptive system. So it's about people and community, and it's about connecting and building community. And again, you guys said, I think you said a couple of times, my biggest concern for SingularityNET, and I've been working in it, I suppose, for getting on for a year now, and I think it's fabulous. The issue is, though, there are a group of disruptive technologies that are exponential, and they're acting together, as you guys know, including blockchain and crypto and robotics and AR, VR, all those things. And what's happening with that is there is no 6-month product roadway anymore. There is no time, as you guys were saying, there's no time, and this is what we're doing with our clients, there's no time to worry about stuff that you would have thought about in the past. And it's just another level up from what it was. Why is that important for this conversation? Because SingularityNET is one of those organizations that sits in that space. And as Jan was saying, that part of the thing with SingularityNET is it is the standard bearer for AI. So in that case, then, it needs to be operating in this space at least as well, if not better, than most organizations can. Because otherwise, like you were saying, it will be too late. So that was that point. And how do you deal with that? And again, in our world, in my humble opinion, what we're doing with our guys, you get them to understand you need a massive, this is the Diamandis stuff, you need a massive transformational purpose, something that's bigger than you, that's cool. Then you need to really understand how you add value now and just focus on the core value you add, your value for product, for market, for channel. And then you need to be able to focus on, well, who is your community? Because it's those guys that it's about trust and connectivity and the build out. And if you don't have those guys and you can't access them fast, then you'll be left behind. So when I was thinking, when you were talking through it, then for me it was, yeah, okay, that's definitely cool because you were talking about that. I think where I got to, because I'm very much in, having done a bit of this before, I was very much in Jan's camp for the strategy bit. Yeah, it's obvious there is a strategy there. I think it was the distinction of the words, yeah, because for me there's the big picture stuff, and then there's the operational strategy, and then there's the tactics and things. And that's the bit that's most usually missed out by any type of organization. They don't get their heads around the what question. They get a why perhaps and a how, but they don't do the what very well. And so the learning for me, when I was listening to, particularly when Jan was talking and you guys were, what you're talking about, or what the benefit of what you might do if you're funded will be, it's the bit about going and talking to people, but what's needed in that space is to develop the relationships, or let the relationships flow and grow in the connecting the community. So the strategy is, how do we deal with what happens next? It's not a long-term 6 months, year, 2 year thing. A bit like Jan was saying, if you want to take that up with a mission, that's cool. It's more about the OKRs. What are your outputs? What's your key stuff that you need, the key results you're going to get. So for me, the beauty of what you were talking about is the ability, because again, we use design thinking and we use OODA, so where are you now? The current reality, vision, playbook, and then run through. And that I think is super cool. The bit of the value I got for you guys was, what could be there at the moment is, go around and do the discovery. And I think Stephen said that, and I totally frame it that way around. But when you're doing the next bit, I would say the next level of value add is to then look at, right, okay, so what is this community and how is it starting to be connected up? And what is the strategy it needs to be able to make the decisions it needs to make to pivot when necessary? So strategy for me is not so much a physical linear document, it's that Fibonacci, it's the Nautilus bit about going round the circle, going up. And that's what I saw in there. If you can help cut that decision-making time down, if you can help build the filaments that increase the community and connectivity, that I can see would be super fab.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Harry, because that's really thoughtfully presented. I love the idea of the innovation commons, because the commons is what, not just, it's like not a single place, but a gathering, like the center of gravity. And in this case, I would even potentially go to parameterize that a little bit more. And Dor and I do have a big focus on the builders, right? Because we really think that, enabling and empowering the builders is, perhaps, and when you think about, space planning because that's a big topic, even if you're trying to create, when Google designs their offices, or whoever designs offices, in their physical buildings, they want to create, there's a lot of thought around, like just how, the gathering spaces are. You want to create more water coolers, you want more hallways so that people can have these hallway conversations, and that's how you facilitate. But when we're thinking in the concept of a virtual, global, decentralized space, what are some of those spots within the innovation commons where, the types of things that would have normally happened at a coffee shop can happen in this space, right? And so understanding, people's awareness even of what those entry points and how people, if we can look from a heuristics and KPIs, OKRs perspective, right? I mean, wouldn't we hope that over time, the attendance in Deep Fund Town Hall grows as a lagging indicator of what's, the success of whatever strategy is happening, and what type of retention? Are those metrics going up? Are people, falling off? Are people showing up and being overwhelmed? They're not able to find their place in their space. So these are all considerations, but in the broad holistic sense of what you're talking to, allowing that to kind of happen without stifling that, I think is very well received. I mean, thank you.
Yeah, I think in there, because you were saying that, so community then, so the bits in there for me, people often talk about builders, just like they used to talk about devs. And for me, there's a whole spectrum of builders. That's the community. It's not just the tech devs or the tech builders. It's the, well, you've got some in there already. It's the strategy builders. It's the marketing builders. It's the You know, the guys who run where she will run part of the organization, and it is an organization, and it's serving a commercial organization, because the marketplace is somewhere where you sell stuff. So you talked about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are part of the equation, but they're not all of it. You need scale up for the build out of the business side of the organization. And that's not to say it's just a business, because it's not, but it's a social impact organization, I would call it. So that was that bit. And then, yeah, the other bit that's in there is that in that space, in that theory, when we're all part of a community, we all hold different sets of roles. And you can have many-to-one roles and one-to-many roles. And in a community, you can be parts of, like a little Venn diagrams, lots of parts of community that all are owed something and owe something. And that, for me, is the brilliance of this area, is getting into start to map some of that out so that you can then have the structure and process that you've got as a foundation, that you can then do all that brilliant innovation and everything else as well. Because people buy in, don't they, into communities because they have an expectation. What value can they add? What value can they be given? And for me, part of what you're talking about as an ecosystem, is that's what it is. That's those different communities that sit within the bigger community. And that's the failure rate. The failure rate is in a corporate or an organization like that that's top down. It's easy because people tell you what to do and you do what you're told. And if you're going to fail, hopefully if you're CEO and that's good, you'll fail fast and then you'll change. And part of the commons bit, isn't it, which I love, that I absolutely love the commons theory, is how do you connect all that brilliance up so it decides things fast? And with SingularityNET, it's getting faster. So that would be the strategy of how do you develop a strategy to cope in an uncertain and risk-on world. So thank you. I thought when I got it, I thought it was a great presentation to talk through.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing your comments and insights. Just briefly, some points you made, like who's our target audience? I think that should be everybody who can impact the outcomes of our ecosystem and can benefit from a wider understanding, right, of the space, and like have a sense of priority. So I think that's one. That's kind of a short answer with our target audience, you know, and we can break it down, and we were gonna break it down in our report. Another thing you mentioned that was interesting was this sense of like there's no time, you know, we can be in like in analysis paralysis when everybody's like full on, you know, full engine starting all over the world right now with AI, you know, and I think I sympathize a lot with that sentiment, and also think that we can all use some, like, you know, eat some of the humble pie of like saying like, okay, we're dealing with a bunch of wicked problems, a lot of which actually understanding what's actually working requires experimentation, and then like seeing what happens, and then like going with what works, and we're not necessarily like having a perfect model of it in order to move forward. And I think this is why our proposal is very like builder centric, you know, it's kind of really based on what are actually the set of levers we can do to increase the ecosystem capacity, okay, to do this stuff. Like what can we do? Which strings can we pull, you know, to attract the best talent, energize it, and retain it? You know, for me, that's the key, you know. And okay, let's do. I'm getting all sorts of. I have all sorts of biological needs building up.
Sorry. If I can, there was one thing I forgot to say, and that is with Felix and all the other guys, they've set up guilds like a strategy guild, and that's just amazing because they're whether they last or fold and stay doesn't matter. But those sort of needs are being addressed as they are shown from the environment to the organism. So that's just quite amazing. And that was, again, that was the bit for me was, yeah, it is moving forward. And the thing about time, it's not that there is no time, you just have to decompress it. And the way you decompress it is what Johnny was saying before. You spend more time in intuition with the people, you make a decision and you move on. And that's that internal, external, scalable, exponential growth side of it. So, but it was mainly the point the guys have done brilliant jobs with the guilds. So thank you very much.
Yeah, lots of respect for, you know, all the different, the swarm and actors in the Singularity. Like, you guys doing really cutting edge stuff. Just, I mean, hopefully you all understand that, you know, me and Johnny like really have really deep respect for everything you guys are doing. Like, you're on the cutting edge. That's why we're so passionate about engaging with all of you, because I think we can work together and even continue to push it even forward, you know, and not like, we're way past like the basic stuff, you know, we're like, this is like advanced game here. Okay, Felix, please. Last question.
I have a very personal take on strategies as well, and a little bit more on the insights as well. For example, me personally, I love to sit down and think about strategies, map them out in details and large. Though I would never give myself the right to put it out, actually, because I would never want to impose it on anybody else than me. In this regard, strategy is for me more a thing what should be left. And what allows you actually to create a strategy, you allow yourself to think very long term, right? And this is a certain mindset. And from my side is, strategies are usually created by a few for the many. And how does this fit then into a decentralized process? It's a contradiction to it even. In this regard, my take is really to say, okay, shut up with your strategy, Felix. Your strategy only works for you and for nobody else, and live it. And in this regard of decentralization, to say, what allows you to create a strategy? Okay, you develop certain skills. You go deep in the past, you go deep in the moment, which helps you to project into the future. And how are you then sure to say, how can I outsource and duplicate myself in this regard so that we come away from this position of a few creating a strategy for the many, and to say, try to teach everybody to develop their own strategy. And that's your job as a strategist then, actually, not imposing your strategies on the many. And make sure the people around you learn to build their own strategy. Help them to cultivate and establish this mindset already. A lot of people are afraid thinking long term. And the good strategist, in my regard, is actually a facilitator who helps other people to say, hey, you have the right to think in long term, and we need you to think in long term. You have a responsibility here as well. And don't follow my strategy, but build up the capacity to develop your strategy. And have really a collective and fractal strategy where each individual rather sees, wow, I am able to develop my own strategy now, in this context where the others can too. And I think this is a much more long-lasting and correct approach actually in this regard. But also, it's a fight a little bit with our ego, because we always think we have the coolest and greatest ideas. I think it's also really needed to check ourselves very often and say, the others might bring your strategy far beyond what you could even have imagined if you train them to do so. So on your proposal, the question would be then, how do you train people to develop strategies and develop this capacity that they wouldn't need, let's say, Dor and Johnny each 6 months to redraft a new strategy?
Whoa, okay, nice reflection. Yeah, I think you can see in the chat like a lot of people like enjoy this perspective. I also really like it because I think it's a good antidote to a lot of like self-limiting thoughts we have about collectives and what can they achieve and what can individuals achieve. I also feel a bit tempered because being around the space of decentralized collaboration, like I also seen like way more so many times where, because there's no like a specific small group of people that are like well positioned and well equipped to create priorities and lead, and like then nobody leads, and you kind of like end up kind of getting stagnant and not evolving. Like I've seen that too. There's like a shadow side for this perspective as well. Okay, like the world is complex. It's not like clearly, we should all be the strategist, and I think it's not. There's one giant leader or like a small group that should define it. There's a lot of in between, and I think a lot of people don't even want to think about strategy. Some people just wanna have a clear. They feel more comfortable and more fulfilled, when they have a clear direction that they're given and they go for it, and that's what makes them tick and happy. Not everybody's like wants to redefine the world and the structures around them, like unlike us, because probably everybody in this room really wants to do that. So there's something true in what you say, but also there's also a point in times in the world where a small group of skilled, informed people have to lead, have to take action, have to be able to say like, okay, I'm actually gonna say a view and like expect people to follow me, or like want to do something in scale, and we need to say what's in priority or not priority. It's just a thing, it's you have to do it. There's ways to do it, there's ways to do it in a way that's inclusive and scalable. There's ways to do it to allow divergent strategies to be implemented, but I'm not, from my own values world view, like there's also a point when you go too far down that lane, and it actually doesn't build capacity to deal with things on the time scale that we need to deal with in certain occasions.
Actually,
not that it matters in the terms of this proposal, because I think this proposal is about including people and adding more, like adding information and data, and trusting people will take and act on it, because we can't impose anything. But yeah, like it takes sometimes to, I guess my argument is that, like, in order to come up with good strategies or like reasonable prioritizations, there's also a moment where people need to kind of go deep dive into data and information, focus on that, do a lot of that, like share their insights, and it kind of tends to converge. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not happy with it, but it tends to converge towards some centralization. And it would be interesting to figure out other ways to do it, but also like sometimes you need to rely on tested and true things for some matters, to move forward.
On strategies, I have to say the most impressive strategists I've met on my life have been old farmers. And the largest percentage of this earth is still farms, agriculture. Why? Because they are the only ones who really have to set strategies to survive. And it's a very simple thing. You have to decide in the spring what you have to seed there, because if not in the harvest and the autumn you won't harvest, and in the winter you are fucked, right? So I think the most people are actually insanely good strategists because they have to, and they had to. When you look now, for example, on old farmers, when they get fucked is when a larger imposed strategy takes them off the possibility on controlling their own strategy, actually, in this regard. So the argument of most people might not want to be strategists. I think being a strategist is a deeply human desire of each individual, actually, which means having control of one's own life and having the possibility to say, what do I want to do the next year? And still, we are still in a world which is highly dominated when we zoom out a little bit from our geographical, let's say, locations out of Europe, out of West America and North America. Look on South America or Africa or East Asia. Largest percentage of this world are still living in agriculture. They are peasant. And all of them have to be really strong strategists. If not, they are fucked. And they don't even have social systems to cover them and whatnot in this regard. So I would actually argue that most people actually want to be strategists, and assuming that most people want and actually are insanely good strategists, I think is for me a more honest approach in saying, maybe most people don't even want to think about it. They don't want to think about them if we establish a system which doesn't want them to think about them because it's comfortable and we don't have to think and whatnot in this regard. Though in the geographical areas where we don't have the system, which actually don't allows you or invites you to strategize, then it dies off. Still, it's a need which is there.
So these are all valid. I just want to say that I didn't say most. I said some. I'm just saying that, like, you know, I guess my point is, like, it's a bit of a nuanced thing, but it is important, like, to say, like, I think everybody can benefit from kind of like understanding the world, engaging in it, making sense of it, making their own personal priorities, thinking about the systems that are around, engaging. It's true. I believe in citizen assemblies, like, and the power of what they're doing, and I think it's amazing. I think there's also a point where you need to take people at where they're at. Okay, like, you need to actually listen to what actually people want, and, like, you know, some want to engage with it, some less want to engage with it, and it's only to respect everybody where they're at. So but, you know, I think besides this, like, just these 2 points, you know, I agree with the spirit of what you're saying.
Also, I would have another thing. I would look mostly not on where people are, but try to figure out where do they want to go. But a lot of details. Harry has his hands up. That's one.
Yeah, it was just a quick one to build on that. So I think Johnny was talking earlier about consultancies, and I used to be in a big consultancy for my sins. So consultants is male energy. They tell you they've got the IP. They tell you what to do. Yeah. And then they don't embed it, so you don't do it. And then they come back again in a couple of years' time and sell you something else, which is all very nice. Coaching, for me, which is what we've done for many years, coaching is a different sort of energy. So exec coaching stuff is, the brilliance is in the people you're working with. So you ask them the questions to get the brilliance out. And often what you need to do is a bit of both. Sometimes you need to consult because they don't understand the thing. And sometimes it's all in their head. You just need to bring it out. And that's what I liked with what Felix was saying, which I believe very strongly in for many, many years, is the job is to take that brilliance. And so this is for you guys in particular. It was the bit was missing for me, to take your brilliance and experience and expertise of, like you say, being world leading in working where you are on a distributed tech platform, and take that experience and brilliance and then help coach your learnings out of that into the organization. So it's not consultancy where you're telling spiky energy, it's coaching where you're getting people to, like you said before, and I'd said as well, this vibes thing, this intuition, getting them to trust intuition, build intuition. And so that was the point I had there. And then again, you moved it on. And so the next bit, as Felix was saying, is, again, everyone has a capability. And part of it for me has always been about enabling people to fulfill their full potential that they want to. Yeah. Because some people don't want to be, you know, whatever it is, head of the organization. They're very happy where they are. And so my point to Felix's point was, everybody does strategies. It's helpful if you can define what area the strategy needs to be about. Because if you can do that, then people can feel comfortable there. And then, like you were saying, over time, you can help embed in everybody. Well, what is all this process? Not just strategy, but what's that whole process about? And how can I learn more bits about the stuff I don't know much about? Some people will want to, and some people won't. But that for me is the power. And what I got out of that door for you guys was that was the bit that was missing at the start for me. Was, yeah, you have this immense amount of expertise and experience you guys have built up. How can you switch that, transform it if you want to help serve the SingularityNET community? That would be my contextual question for you. That was a bit longer than I thought it'd be. Sorry.
I mean, I think coming up with asking lots of questions, being good facilitators, you know, and I think, you know, and you know, in our core, I think we're capacity builders. That's what we want to do. And I think if we follow these heuristics, it's going to be okay.
And one short take on this, one thing I actually really believe in it. The best way to build capacities is having the mindset of your golden KPI is becoming obsolete. Like a good master, and you have the apprentice. The master's highest achievement is done when the apprentice overcomes himself, and the master says, fuck, I have nothing to teach anymore, even farther than I could. And having this mindset already in place to say, oh, okay, how can I build capacities that I become even stronger than myself, and I don't need myself anymore? And it's difficult to wrap this into a business model, because when you put yourself already by default, hey, our goal is become obsolete. Ideally, you don't need us anymore in, let's say, X months or years or whatnot. And it's also a human challenge, though I think for this collective mindset of people, societies, what we build here actually, this really crucial part. And saying the success is really then when people, let's say, for example, which participate in your workshops, from my perspective, would be able to define as good, let's say, strategies as you are able to do. Maybe not everybody, but some of them at least. And yeah, short notice to what people want. Like, and
yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying, Felix. You're a beautiful soul, and I'm very tired, and also I'm in a really hot room. Like there's like a heat wave, and there's no air conditioning. So I'm like, I don't know if you see me starting to shine. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up, and it felt amazing to talk to you all. That was kind of like the highlight of my week, I think, was, you know, between all writing documents and and posts about like just talking, and you know, I love it. And also maybe arguing a bit or understanding where there's friction, or where the stuff we said that was like maybe not, you know, could have been phrased better, stuff like that. It's so like, I love it. So just thanks to everybody for like just showing up to talk with us. And yeah, and I really hope I hope we get voted in and we can continue to engage. And I mean, probably we're gonna engage anyway, but you know, just thank you. It was awesome talking to you all.
Thank you. Noodle says thank you. And it's
oh yeah,
that time's up.
Wow, Noodles has goggly eyes without having goggly eyes.
And for all the people watching the recording and want to join the discussions, join the next town hall. And now we stop recording.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
yeah, I really enjoyed
everybody.
that. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you, Jan and the guys, for setting it up as well, Felix.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. We're seeing you.
Yeah. See you. Thank you.